monitoring of everyday citizens.
And yet they use these terrorist activities to go to Congress and to say, we need more authority to get access to credit records. We need more authority to get access to hotel records or to other financial information. We want easier access for wiretapping. We don't want to have to comply with the Fourth Amendment.
Jen Lori Goldman is the Deputy Director of the Center for Democracy and Technology in Washington, D.C. She says that the big stumbling block is still the Constitution.
It's a burden. It's difficult. It gets in the way. Well, that's what the Constitution does. It gets in the way of the government intruding upon individual liberties.
America was shaken once again not too long ago when a CIA agent and his wife were found selling state secrets to Russia. What was almost unimaginable was the way that the authorities were finally able to track Richard Ames down. You see, one of the things that few people realize is that the electrical system in their home can also carry data. In other words, it can do the same thing that a phone line can. In fact, readily available technology now allows you to turn any outlet in your home into a phone jack.
What the FBI was able to do was wait until Ames would leave the house or go to bed. Then, from a van down the street, they were able to send an electronic signal through the electrical system of Ames' house and actually flip on his home computer. Call up the internally stored files and transmit them either by modem or electrical power lines to the FBI's waiting machines. Then, when they were done, they simply sent a signal through the power lines and flipped the computer off. Ames had no way to know they were ever there. The same way, we would have no idea if someone did the same thing with our home or office computer.
How tight is the web of surveillance of the government on the activities of the average citizen? How efficiently can the government actually monitor the actions of every one of us? Is the government able to track and monitor our phone calls and all activities? Well, I'm a Canadian, and here I stand just inside the United States border. A few hours ago, I crossed the Canadian border into the United States with my car. Obviously, Customs knows that my car is in the United States because they optically scanned the license plate. But aside from knowing my car is here, what else do they know? The fact of the matter is, that is the extent of their knowledge of my activities or where I'm going. Let's say that an illegal immigrant wanted to stay here in the United States and obtain a job. It would be illegal, of course, but there's no good system today to ensure that he could not get a job in this country. If he presented a false social security number, something that's relatively easy to do, most employers would never know the difference. This little example just illustrates the massive holes that exist today in the security data net. There is just no way to
verify the national ID card, the global ID.
But all of that is beginning to change. Within the government and the legislative circles, there are whispers that we are about to see the introduction of a long-feared American national ID card.
And initially, there was talk about a national ID to stem illegal immigration. If everyone in this country who is legally authorized to work and is a U.S. citizen has to carry a card, we can quickly weed out those people who are not authorized to work. So people like Senator Simpson have been calling for a national ID card or a national identification system as a way to prevent illegal immigrants from getting jobs. Now we have seen even greater force given to that argument because this is a very popular issue right now, trying to keep illegal immigrants out of the workforce.
In reality, however, the issue of illegal workers is a very small problem. What makes it a big issue is the emotion attached to it. The concern in privacy circles is that the emotion surrounding the issue is being deliberately manipulated to lure this country into accepting something they would never have considered before. And then, what comes in under the guise of a worker registration card will evolve into the full-scale national ID card that was envisioned all along.
Everybody always says, well, we'll only use it for this purpose. We won't use it for anything else. And the history, if you're in the United States, of any kind of database of information or identifying number is that at the beginning it's promised to be used only for one purpose.
A Yale-educated lawyer, for 17 years, Bob Gellman was the counsel to the Congressional Subcommittee dealing with, among other things, information and justice.
Social Security number is the classic. If you go back and find one of the original Social Security cards, for many years it said on it, only for Social Security purposes, not for identification. And then they came along and said, well, if we could use this for tax purposes as a tax ID number, it'll save a lot of money and prevent a lot of fraud. And so they started to do that, and that was really the first step, because anyone who pays wages or interest or dividends had to report it using the Social Security number. And then the welfare people came along and said, if we could use Social Security numbers to control welfare, we can avoid all kinds of fraud.
Are we moving to a system that will replace the Social Security card? Many insiders say it is only a matter of time.
This healthcare security card will offer this package of benefits in a way that can never be taken away. So let us agree on this, whatever else we disagree on. Before this Congress finishes its work next year, you will pass and I will sign legislation to guarantee this security to every citizen of this country.
Whenever there's been a call for a national ID card, the proponents always say, we just want to use it in this limited context. We just want to use the identifier or the card in this limited context. For instance, the card that the president was waiving, we're only going to use that in the health context. Any other use will be illegal. I think it's pretty easy to imagine a health security card becoming a national identifier. If, as its proponents say, a health security card would have to be unique to the individual and would have to be tamper-proof or tamper-resistant, maybe have a magnetic stripe, maybe have a biometric identifier, that is going to be really tempting to use it for other purposes.
If you come up with a new health identifier and say it's only going to be used for health, there's nothing to stop the Congress 2 years later from saying, well, we're going to use it for health, and we're going to use it for welfare, and then we're going to use it for immigration, and then we're going to use it for everything else. And there simply aren't. There's no confidence that any kind of legal protections will remain in place over the long term.
While President Clinton's health care plan did not pass, the administration still claims to be committed to the program. It just says that changes will have to be implemented incrementally. Meanwhile, the momentum toward a national ID continues to grow.
The simple fact is this: once you have a national identifier number and an electronically based card, you have closed the only hole in the surveillance net. Your card with your unique identifier number will enable the government to tie all of its computer records together on you.
You can have distributed networks, distributed systems. You can have millions and millions and millions of computers. They all talk to each other. You can link information, you can share information, you can manipulate it, you can create profiles. It's absurd to talk about a data bank. The information is all over the world. It is in many, many different databases, and they can all talk to each other.
This is all invisible to people, and they have no idea that the pieces of their lives lie scattered in these different files. What's going on slowly is that there are more and more links being created between these records, and we're getting closer and closer to the notion of some kind of centralized dossier on people. We're not there yet, but that's where we're headed.
Our view is that a unique identifier not only isn't necessary in order to make a system like that work, it's extremely dangerous. That when you start to link very sensitive personal information with a unique identifier, then you run the risk of that number getting out, that you get security breaches both from outside the system and from within the system.
The danger of a unique identifier is that it will be very easy to link disparate records.
How close are we to a national database? A database that contains information on every one of us. How close are we to the day when every one of our deeds is open to some faceless bureaucrat? The answer may surprise you. Congressman Neil Smith of Iowa's 4th District has revealed in a shocking report to the American public that Congress and the White House have already agreed to secretly fund a national identification center. This center, located just 4 hours from Washington, D.C. in Virginia, will enable law enforcement officials and intelligence agents to consolidate hundreds of millions of files on every single American. Visionaries in past decades have warned that Big Brother government is coming. Sophisticated technologies and advanced computers now allow the government to monitor the actions of every single one of us.
The center, we are told, will monitor citizens for compliance with gun control regulations. But, according to the congressman, its use will expand beyond that purpose. The solution to screening people is to have a national center computerized so that local law enforcement offices can instantly access information from all states. We will continue to establish the national identification center for this and other law enforcement purposes. But what other purposes? Will this database record credit histories? How about criminal records or
The
military
Antichrist
service
system being
files?
set up right before our
Or
eyes,
taking
people.
a step further,
So I had to
and
share
the
this
future
with you guys.
government, could such files record political affiliations or religious beliefs? Such questions remain unanswered. However, for the first time in history, we face a moment in time when the technology could make it possible.
Eroding freedoms, the gathering and compiling of data, the monitoring of the actions of every citizen. These are things that we normally associate with totalitarian governments or with the darkest days of the Soviet Empire. Could we be on the road to our own version of a police state? Are our personal freedoms or financial security at risk? Unfortunately, when you consider this carefully, the answer to both those questions may very well be yes. But you see, there's more to it than that. When you examine it carefully, you will see that within the United States and Canada, these are not isolated events. They are happening in every Western nation in the world today. I have studied these issues for years, looking for the common denominator, the common thread that runs through all of this. And what I have found is undeniable evidence that a common agenda is being followed in every major Western nation in the world today. Why? Because these governments have come to a realization that we have entered a global age. They recognize the need for governments and nations to come together, not as powerful central governments, but rather as part of an all-powerful central world government. If we want to understand any pieces of this puzzle...
This is an old video, by the way. So much has happened since then.
And that big picture
This is
old,
guys. But everything in this video is transpiring right now before our very eyes.
Will play an ever smaller role.
Jerry Ka is the author of En Route to Global Occupation. He understands how late in the game we are.
I have here in front of me a paid advertisement that was recently run by the WCPA in the March-April issue of Sojourners magazine. And in this article, they openly call for a world government, and they state, and I quote, "As of January 1995, more than 400 non-governmental organizations in 72 countries, comprising more than 15 million individual members, had joined the Global Ratification and Elections Network to work for ratification and implementation of the Constitution for the Federation of Earth."
In fact, the WCPA, the World Constitution and Parliament Association, with the full approval of these 72 nations, has already drafted a world constitution which would override the American Constitution.
Globalists for years have talked about the need for a constitutional convention to make the necessary changes in the U.S. Constitution to allow us to legally go into a world government. Or better yet, from their standpoint, to replace our Constitution completely with a brand new world Constitution. Something called the Philadelphia II Initiative is calling for a worldwide constitutional convention to introduce a world constitution for a world government. They're calling it Philadelphia II because the first time around in Philadelphia, we received our U.S. Constitution. This is the second time around now, and it's going to be a world constitution for a world government.
The sad part is that many publicly elected
Okay, I'm gonna make another part because the time's about up. But I wanted to say this quick. This is old. This is an old video from Grand Jeffrey. Even though it's old, all the stuff in this video that is representing, it's happening right now. That's what I want you guys to understand. So, stay tuned. I got a part 3 coming. Okay, God bless you all.